T-minus 10, 9, 8,
The clock is operating. We're underway.
Tranquility Base here.
Endeavour, go at throttle.
Nobody would have imagined when Bill Clinton became president back in the 90s that Ireland, within a decade, would not just have a ceasefire, but have a working peace process. Nobody would have imagined that. And I think Obama might hope to be able to say that, you know, at this particular juncture when he came to Ireland, many people believe in Middle East peace is impossible. But Ireland teaches you the lesson that it's not impossible. It isn't impossible if you have those two characteristics, patience and courage.
Well, we can hear the screams as these vehicles draw up on the main street. Let's just see if the Obamas are actually in one of these vehicles. We're not 100% sure, but oh yes, I think yes, of course they are. You could tell by that scream. The people there on the main street could see the Obamas before we could in that picture. As the door of that vehicle opened, there's Michelle Obama and of course President Obama. So let's just watch this unfold. Local officials, of course, doing the official welcome. But I think this part of the day is about as unstuffy and unceremonial as you can probably get.
Indeed, and let me tell you now, the role of local officials is absolutely critical. There is no way that they will allow anybody from Dublin, from the big smoke, to Bigfoot them on this, their real moment in the sun.
Yeah, an absolute moment of history here. And that, I believe, is Michael Healy, who is a distant cousin, an 8th cousin of Barack Obama, being hugged there by Michelle Obama.
I'm looking to see the family resemblance, but he's slightly blocked out by Michelle at the moment.
Yes, he in fact attended President Obama's inauguration, the Irish connection having been discovered during the election campaign. They're looking very relaxed, the Obamas. Time for a chat. I think they're running ahead of schedule, so they can afford to be a little relaxed. But the crowd cheering, calling, demanding that walkabout and a few handshakes. Let's see what happens.
Very welcome. Great to see you. Welcome. Fantastic to see you all. This is Chrissy Johnson. She works for you. She's a cousin of this man. That's right. That's right.
Lots of cheers of welcome, welcome, you're very welcome. That Céad Míle Fáilte that anyone visiting Ireland as a tourist will no doubt see. Céad Míle Fáilte, 100,000 welcomes is what it means, and that's certainly what the Obamas are getting here. Let's listen in a little more.
Piece of Irish, which people have been practicing, I'm told, for the last few days, is Féidir Ling.
Oh yes.
Yes, we can.
I haven't had an opportunity to mention that yet, Fergal, but yes, we can, of course, echoing Barack Obama's election buzz phrase rather than buzzword.
It'll be interesting to see if he comes out with it tonight. If he can if he can do what the Queen did so eloquently here at Dublin Castle.
I would expect that he'd be practicing a little bit of Irish. I must just correct myself. I said Michael Healy. It's Henry Healy, was the 8th cousin of Barack Obama, whom we saw Michelle Obama hugging a little earlier. And he's been an extremely busy man doing interviews in the run-up to this visit to the village, and he and the local canon who had helped unearth the connection through local parish records, they both attended Obama's presidential inauguration.
There is, I'm told, another claim to Obama kinship in the city of Kilkenny, some miles away from here in County Offaly, but it seems the people of Moneygall won out. How that happened, I'm not sure.
I'd love to know the sort of local politics behind that, but yeah, there may be a few people wishing that they were the town or village to be on the receiving end of this visit, this entourage. I mean, this is an incredible welcome for them, and obviously after this the Obamas will be going to the UK for a state visit. I mean, do you think you're going to see, oh, there we have it,
there's the baby
the obligatory hug with baby. But do you think we would see this level of enthusiasm in the UK?
I mean, it'll be different. You know, clearly a state visit is a much more formal occasion. I think, as you saw with Queen Elizabeth here in Ireland last week, although on the last day she did, you know, emerging from the English market in Cork, go over to the crowds of people and do a walkabout, not dissimilar to what we're seeing now. I think clearly it's a much more political occasion when President Obama goes to London, and, as I say, will be a little bit stiffer and formal. But he is the kind of person, for all his own detachment and you know, his un-Clinton-esque, if you like, public persona, he is somebody who does excite a very warm response amongst ordinary people, and I think you'll probably see that reflected. I'm certain you'll see that reflected in Britain as well. But we are talking about an Irish village here, you know, and it's a, you know, I would say this, I'm Irish, but they are the warmest places you can go.
And we know that, of course, the First Lady, Michelle Obama, has quite a reputation for being, you know, making connections with people and staying in touch with people. I think she's going to be
Absolutely.
catching up with some people that she met on their previous visit to the UK when they returned there this week. But
I'm just wondering what's going through the minds of the Secret Service, because this,
yeah,
I mean, they would have, people clearly have been screened well in advance, as you pointed out.
This is pretty controlled, really, in
Mm.
terms of meeting a crowd, isn't it?
But it's still pretty nerve-wracking for them, because you're in amongst people there, and they're watching everybody carefully. They have to.
Now, we know that almost every president since JFK came here in 1963 has made a point of visiting Ireland. Richard Nixon came here, sometimes described as the forgotten visit of Richard Nixon, rather overshadowed.
We airbrushed that from history.
Yes, rather overshadowed by other presidential visits. Ronald Reagan to Ballyporeen and Tipperary. A huge tourism bounce off the back of that visit.
Yeah.
And Bill Clinton, of course, as we discussed earlier, 3 times, and George W. Bush, and now Barack Obama, following in the footsteps of those previous presidents. It seems it's an essential part of any president's tour, isn't it?
It is indeed, and I'm looking at Moneygall. It's very similar to Ballyporeen in terms of its profile. I remember being there all those years ago when Ronald Reagan came, and it was such a different Ireland. It really was. It was just on the verge, I think, of becoming a country which knew prosperity, where people weren't leaving in droves to find jobs abroad, and a country that had a sense of really strong self-esteem.
So just on the verge of the Celtic Tiger years.
Yes, it was, you know, they were a little bit away, but we were moving towards that. It's very interesting now. Obama comes, of course, again at a period when we're experiencing a dip in national fortunes and in terms of the way we see ourselves. But what the Queen's visit last week and the Obama visit this week do is lift public morale. There's no doubt about that when you go around this city talking to people.
And the Irish Prime Minister, Enda Kenny, really keen to present an image of Ireland that is moving forward, restoration, recovery. Those are the words he's been talking about, and certainly the visit of the Queen, this visit, a fantastic platform for Ireland to look ahead from. And we heard a little earlier from the CEO of Tourism Ireland saying, for example, that inquiries from potential tourists to visit Cashel, where the Queen was last week, up by 40% over the weekend. That's quite an incredible figure. So it's sometimes hard to quantify what these sorts of visits mean in terms of tourism and the economy, but one would certainly expect some kind of bounce off the back of these.
No, you would, definitely. I think we will see more American and particularly more British visitors coming this summer as a result of the kind of imagery of Ireland, the positive imagery that's being projected. We need to be careful though, right? The key decisions about Ireland's future are not going to be taken in Washington. They're not going to be taken in London. They will be taken in Berlin and Frankfurt. And it's all very well and wonderful to see the kind of national coming together we've seen over the last week or so and today. But the question is, how impressed is Angela Merkel? How impressed is Sarkozy with the Ireland of today? And the answer is not very. There is a very bitter, almost toxic dispute now over the nature of Irish economic recovery and the price that this country is being asked to pay by Europe for its bailout. That is what's dominating the political agenda, and as soon as Barack Obama goes, that's what's going to be at the top of the political debate here.
So the Irish might hope that the Americans, as a result of this, can have a better understanding of what Ireland wants and maybe exert some influence, but beyond that, they can't hope for anything more.
I think they're realistic. I mean, Enda Kenny, you know, the briefing in advance of this was that he wanted to raise the issue of Ireland's economic crisis and was hoping America would support us in Europe. I think he's realistic enough to know that there is very little Barack Obama can do to influence, or that he might be minded to do, to be quite frank with you, to influence the internal economic dynamics of the European Union, and particularly the situation of states like Ireland, like Greece, like Portugal.
President Obama, of course, going to France later in the week, one of the European economies that's doing well, the top tier, if you like, of the European economies. Ireland, unfortunately, finds itself in a different division to Germany and to France.
After many years of extraordinary progress.
Of extraordinary growth. In the overall context of Europe, where do you think the relationship between America and Europe is heading? We hope to talk later to former Irish Prime Minister John Bruton, and he's written a paper discussing the relationship between the two, and he would like to see a sort of a new relationship developing on a more equal footing almost between the President of the United States and the President of the European Council. I mean, where do you think that relationship is headed?
I think it's an interesting one because on a public level, the arrival of Obama seemed to signal an end to the froidure between which existed, you know, for quite a long part of the Bush administration.
The Bush administration,
and the wars in Iraq and the wars in Afghanistan. That's not to say, however, that Obama, once he came into power and found himself dealing in practicalities with the Europeans, particularly over the issue of Afghanistan, which is now known as Obama's war. You know, I'm not sure that he finds Europe any more yielding than Bush did. Countries look at situations, and the European community, the European Union looks at a situation like Afghanistan, and make decisions based on their own national self-interest. There isn't a desire to become part of a great American effort in Afghanistan. And I think Obama is the perfect political pragmatist. He realizes this.
Speaking of Afghanistan, one issue that has drawn criticism from some quarters of Ireland is the use of Shannon for US troops. A staging point, if you like, en route to Afghanistan. It was offered, the use of Shannon was offered to the Americans in the wake of 9/11, but then when it became used by American troops during the Iraq War, there was considerable criticism. But as we were discussing, Fergal and I, a little earlier, really there hasn't been any sign of protest that we're aware of in this visit. During this visit, the Gardaí, the Irish police, said they were ready to accommodate any reasonable protests, but we haven't seen or heard or been made aware of any protest whatsoever. So the President and the First Lady still making their way down Moneygall's main street, its only street, doing a lengthy walkabout. I'm sure they're keen to try to meet as many of the people gathered here as they can, not to disappoint anyone. I'm sure they're well aware of the huge amount of preparation that's been going on for their arrival in Moneygall. We're told that while they're here, they're going to be presented with some specially commissioned gifts, a scroll for the president in the tradition of the ancient Irish scrolls, the likes of we would see in museums here in Dublin, and for Michelle Obama we're told a necklace, a silver necklace with the flower of County Offaly, representing the flower of County Offaly. Whether we actually get a chance to see any of those presentations, I'm not sure at this point.
Those scrolls, the scroll that you mentioned, of course, reflects the very beginnings of an Irish literary tradition. They were decorated by monks in monasteries, places like Clonmacnoise, which had the greatest centre of art of that kind in medieval Europe, in early medieval Europe.
And you think of the famous Book of Kells, for example, with its, many visitors to Dublin will have seen it, with its beautifully illustrated manuscripts.
And these are sumptuous, gorgeous creations. And of course the monks left here. They went from Ireland out into Europe. They went to Scotland, right down the west coast of Britain. And some, you know, what some would claim carried their art as far as the shores of North America. What definitely did come from this country to America was a rich literary tradition. And you think of great Irish-American writers like Francis Scott Fitzgerald, for example, John Kennedy O'Toole, all part of the cultural enrichment of America, which, you know, was part of the Irish story of migration.
We can hear some of the secret agents shouting, back off, back off. I think they're worried that the crowd is getting a little too enthusiastic there as they try to get their moment with President and Michelle Obama. But they have made their way along a reasonable portion of the main street now, but whether they get to go, whether they have the time to go all the way along, we don't know. We were talking a little earlier about Ballyporeen, where Michael Reagan, the great-grandfather of Ronald Reagan, lived. And you were there, you said, when Ronald Reagan visited.
I was a much younger newspaper reporter.
A child reporter at the time.
I was sent there a week in advance, and my job was to come up with a Reagan story every day. How I did it, I don't know. But what I can remember is that on the Saturday before Reagan visited, so many people from all over Ireland came to Ballyporeen that the road outside the place collapsed. And I was presented with a great scoop. I was the only reporter there. A great yawning chasm in the middle of the street. It was big news in those days.
Well, thankfully, I don't think anything like that has happened, although there's been a lot of sprucing up of the area going on. Now, let me see the Obamas. It looks like they could be on the move. And this, in fact, is 123 Main Street. This is the house where Joseph and Phoebe Kearney, the parents of Falmouth Kearney, lived in Moneygall. It was then, back in 1850, a single-storey dwelling, a thatched cottage, we're told. That extension, that second floor, has been added since then. But we're told it's been stripped back inside, and that perhaps it might be developed as some sort of heritage centre. And no doubt, you know, Moneygall is now firmly on the tourist map. If people hadn't heard of it before, they certainly have now. And, you know, referencing that Ballyporeen visit by Ronald Reagan, this sort of trip has the power to put somewhere tiny, a tiny community like this, really on the map, really on the tourist trail, hasn't it?
It has. I mean, you saw that particularly in County Wexford, around the ancestral birthplace of John Fitzgerald Kennedy's people. And that's become a major tourist draw. I mean, almost a must-see for any Americans who are touring in that part of the country, presuming, of course, that they are of a Republic or of a Democratic Party disposition.
Yes, JFK, I mean, his parents and grandparents, none of them were born in Ireland, but he managed to really successfully build this image of himself as the Irish American president.
Oh, and we, you know, helped him hugely. I mean, he had an immense emotional hold on the Irish psyche. He really did. I think I told you earlier that if you went into many homes in rural Ireland, you found two portraits on the wall. One was of Pope John and the other was of JFK.
So the Obamas spending a few minutes in the ancestral homestead, it's been called.
Now that, village, if you could imagine that main street in the middle of the 1850s, it would have been just a mud track down the middle, small thatched cabins, incredibly claustrophobic.
Yes, according to the Irish National Archives, it was a small thatched house with stone or lime mortar walls and in very bad condition because, people were not living in, although the Kearney family were shoemakers and relatively well off, when the famine hit Ireland, they were badly affected like everyone else.
Well, they were indeed, because the people to whom they would have sold shoes or with whom they would have done business would have been gone. Don't forget, 1 million dead through hunger. Principally, it has to be said, through disease. Diseases like cholera, like typhoid, which swept through the countryside, ravaged parishes. And the feeding of the people was left for a long period, largely to the devices of what they called the Poor Law Union.
You are watching BBC World News, and that is our live coverage from the tiny town of Moneygall there in County Offaly in Ireland, where President Obama is setting foot in the house of his great-great-great-great-grandfather, who was a shoemaker in 1850. He left for New York, and their history was made. But 3,000 or so people there on the streets of Moneygall, only 300 inhabitants. And as Anita and Fergal were saying there, they hope that this is going to be a huge boost and putting Moneygall on the tourist trail. But a huge round of applause there for President Obama from the crowd in that blustery weather in Moneygall. We're going to stay with this because he has gone into the pub in Moneygall, and the big question that's going to be asked and has been asked is whether he will drink a pint of Guinness. The Queen herself was in a bar in Ireland only last week, and she didn't drink the Guinness that was poured, but everybody has been speculating on whether President Obama is going to enjoy a pint in there. He must be pretty relieved to get out of the weather because it has been awful. As you can see, it has been a mixture of blustery showers and strong winds, with the occasional sunny spell, giving everybody a bit of optimism about the blue skies, but they've soon been replaced by rain. And look at everybody there in their waterproofs, but it doesn't seem to have, ruined the day at all, because everybody seems to have a smile on their face there in Moneygall. But the President has been in Dublin a little earlier on, and he met the Irish President, Mary McAleese. He had talks then with the Irish Prime Minister, the Taoiseach Enda Kenny. And tomorrow, Tuesday, he'll be making his way to the UK, followed by France and Poland. But as he spends a while inside the pub, the media scrum outside, and the crowds very happy indeed to see President Obama there.
Der Thriller endete gut für den Deutschen mit dem 4. Sieg im 5. Rennen, und doch gab es am Ende Ärger bei Red Bull, denn offenbar spioniert Ferrari die Mannschaft aus.
Die Feierlaune scheint Red Bull momentan niemand verderben zu können. Und wenn doch, dann offenbar nur mit Mitteln, die unter der Gürtellinie liegen. Nach dem 4. Triumph im 5. Rennen verdächtigt Red Bull-Konkurrent Ferrari. Die Scuderia soll angeblich mehr wissen, als erlaubt ist. Beim ersten Reifenwechsel spielt Red Bull auf Zeit, doch Alonso im Ferrari biegt fast zeitgleich mit Konkurrent Webber in die Boxengasse.
Da haben wir gemerkt, dass Ferrari irgendeine Art der Spionage hat. Die haben also auf uns reagiert. Und das haben wir beim zweiten Stopp dann geändert.
Mit dem Rennausgang hatte Ferrari trotz des kometenhaften Starts Alonsos von Platz 4 auf 1 am Ende nichts zu tun. Vettel hielt Lewis Hamilton im McLaren Runde um Runde auf Distanz, auch wenn bei ihm das Bremskraftrückgewinnungssystem KERS wieder mal streikte. Auf den langen Geraden fehlten Vettel ganze 80 PS.
Es war gut, hat Spaß gemacht. Ich dachte, ich kann ihn überholen, doch sein Auto ist so schnell, vor allem in den schnellen Kurven.
Auch im Titelkampf enteilt Vettel seinen Konkurrenten immer weiter. 41 Punkte beträgt sein Vorsprung in der Fahrerwertung. Aufhalten kann er sich momentan nur selbst.
Got stuck when it was leaving the American embassy. And it's bomb-proof, it's very heavy, and it failed to make it out of the compound. It became stuck on a security ramp. Well, the president and his wife, en route to his ancestral home with his great-great-great-great-grandfather, at least where he came from, that's in County Offaly, had to abandon the car after the collision in front of those waving crowds in Dublin. All this after the preparation had been done by the Secret Service. We'll have more live from Dublin shortly on the next edition of The Hub. Stay with us.
Bevor es Mitte der Woche zum G8-Gipfel nach Frankreich geht, machte der Präsident am Morgen Halt auf seiner ersten Station in Irland. Neben politischen Gesprächen stand dabei vor allem ein Abstecher in die Provinz auf dem Programm, in ein kleines Dorf, von dem aus sich Obamas Vorfahren einst auf den weiten Weg nach Amerika gemacht haben. Ulrich Klose berichtet.
Ein kühles Guinness schon am frühen Nachmittag? Yes, he can. Von wegen trockenes Protokoll, Mr. President im Pub, Staatsbesuche könnten schlimmer anfangen. Aber Barack Obama ist ja auch ein bisschen zu Hause hier. Wenn sich die Iren nicht irren, dann wanderte sein Urgroßvater vor 160 Jahren aus dem 300-Seelennest Moneygall in die USA aus. Im Dorf trafen Barack Obama und Ehefrau Michelle heute jubelnde Fans und den Cousin 8. Grades. Es ist für mich eine völlig unwirkliche Verwandtschaftsbeziehung. Ich kenne Obama nur aus dem Fernsehen und habe ihn vorher auch noch nie getroffen. Moneygall steht Kopf. Ein eigener Song, überall Flaggen und eine Firma spendierte 3500 Liter Farbe für frische Hausanstriche. Es ist wunderbar, ein Privileg, ihn hier bei uns zu haben. Früher habe ich ihn Abracadabra genannt, weil ich mir seinen Namen nicht merken konnte, sagt diese Frau dem Reporter. Jetzt liebe ich ihn. Obama ist längst nicht der erste US-Präsident mit irischen Wurzeln. Auch John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan und Bill Clinton kamen schon zu Besuch. Für das Präsidentenpaar ist der Irland-Abstecher der Auftakt einer 6-tägigen Europareise. Den Hurling-Stock für Irlands Nationalsport, den ihm heute Premier Kenny schenkte, wird der US-Präsident morgen wohl nicht mitnehmen, wenn er in London die Queen trifft. Dann wird die Party im Dorf seiner Vorfahren wohl zu Ende sein. Aber hier hoffen sie jetzt auf viele Obama-Touristen, auf das Big Money in Moneygall.
Goldeter Fehltritt. Der viel diskutierte Hut-Fauxpas von Prinzessin Beatrice bei der Hochzeit ihres Cousins Prinz William hat sich ausgezahlt. Der Kopfschmuck, den Kritiker als Hirschgeweih oder Brezel bezeichneten, wurde jetzt im Internet für mehr als 90.000 € versteigert. Der Käufer ist unbekannt. Das Geld geht an Hilfsorganisationen für Kinder.
Ein gewaltiger Tornado hat in der 50.000 Einwohnerstadt Joplin im US-Bundesstaat Missouri mindestens 89 Menschen in den Tod gerissen. Tausende Häuser wurden ganz oder teilweise zerstört und noch immer, so befürchten Rettungstrupps vor Ort, liegen unter den Trümmern weitere Opfer. Aus den USA Carsten Mierke.
Main Street in Joplin, Missouri. Die Hauptstraße lag mitten im Zentrum des Tornados. Seit 17:45 Uhr Sonntagabend steht hier nichts mehr. Unter Schock sitzen Verletzte am Straßenrand, andere suchen nach Überlebenden. Ich habe mich in die Badewanne gehockt, es war wie ein Erdbeben, so hat es uns durchgeschüttelt. Das war das Krankenhaus von Joplin, in den oberen Stockwerken flogen die Fenster raus, alle Patienten mussten evakuiert werden. Der Rettungshubschrauber zerstört. Es hat mir den Magen umgedreht, sie haben mich reingerufen, sagt diese Krankenschwester, aber auf solche Bilder war ich nicht vorbereitet. Bis gestern war das der Parkplatz, jetzt ist es ein Autograb. Jedes schnell nach Menschen durchsuchte Auto bekommt ein X. Wenn es die Rettungskräfte gründlich untersucht haben, machen sie noch einen Kreis darum. Aber soweit sind sie noch nicht im Chaos von Joplin. Er kommt direkt auf uns zu, rennt weg, ruft der Familienvater. 10 Kilometer lang und bis zu 1,5 Kilometer breit war dieser Todestornado. Er gehörte zu einem Extremwettergebiet, das von Texas im Süden bis nach Illinois im Nordwesten reichte. Aber nirgends war es so schlimm wie in Joplin südlich von Kansas City. Dort auf der Interstate 44 kippte er reihenweise die Megatrucks auf die Seite. Fast alle Strom- und Telefonleitungen sind zerstört, viele Gasleitungen gebrochen, Feuer brechen aus. Die ganze Nacht hindurch wurde gesucht und notdürftig weggeräumt. Tornadojäger, die am Abend in die Stadt fahren, glauben nicht, was sie da sehen. Die Zahl der Toten wird wohl über 100 steigen und es wird Wochen dauern, bis es hier wieder zu halbwegs normalem Leben kommt. In Joplin, Missouri.
Der isländische Vulkan Grímsvötn sorgt weiter dafür, dass der Inselstaat vom internationalen Luftverkehr abgeschnitten ist. Seit dem Wochenende spuckt der Berg heiße Asche bis zu 20 Kilometer hoch in die Luft. Noch sind nur die Flughäfen Islands gesperrt. Das könnte sich aber in den kommenden Tagen ändern. Weil der Wind dreht, könnte die Aschewolke bereits morgen Richtung Südosten ziehen und bis Mitte der Woche den Nordseeraum erreichen. Teile Islands sind inzwischen von einer dicken Ascheschicht bedeckt. Mehr dazu auch bei uns später im Wetter.
And while we rode the route and we smiled and we waved, the city workers were right behind us cleaning up the garbage. It was a little depressing. But I'll bet those parade organizers are watching TV today and feeling kind of bad. Because this is a pretty good parade right here. Go Bulls, I like that. We got some Bulls fans here. Now, of course, an American doesn't really require Irish blood to understand that ours is a proud, enduring, centuries-old relationship, that we are bound by history and friendship and shared values. And that's why I've come here today as an American president to reaffirm those bonds of affection. Earlier today, Michelle and I visited Monegal, where we saw my ancestral home and dropped by the local pub, and we received a very warm welcome from all the people there, including my long-lost 8th cousin, Henry. Henry now is affectionately known as Henry VIII. And it was remarkable to see the small town where a young shoemaker named Falmouth Carney, my great-great-great-grandfather, my grandfather's grandfather, lived his early life. And I was shown the records from the parish recording his birth. And we saw the home where he lived. And he left during the Great Hunger, as so many Irish did, to seek a new life in the New World. He traveled by ship to New York, where he entered himself into the records as a laborer. He married an American girl from Ohio. They settled in the Midwest. They started a family. It's a familiar story, because it's one lived and cherished by Americans of all backgrounds. It's integral to our national identity. It's who we are, a nation of immigrants from all around the world. But standing there in Monegal, I couldn't help but think how heartbreaking it must have been for that great-great-great-grandfather of mine and so many others to part, to watch Donegal coasts and Dingle cliffs recede, to leave behind all they knew in hopes that something better lay over the horizon. When people like Falmouth boarded those ships, they often did so with no family, no friends, no money, nothing to sustain their journey but faith. Faith in the Almighty. Faith in the idea of America. Faith that it was a place where you could be prosperous, you could be free, you could think and talk and worship as you please. a place where you could make it if you tried. And as they worked and struggled and sacrificed and sometimes experienced great discrimination to build that better life for the next generation, they passed on that faith to their children and to their children's children. An inheritance that their great-great-great-grandchildren like me still carry with them. We call it the American dream. It's the dream that Falmouth Carney was attracted to when he went to America. It's the dream that drew my own father to America from a small village in Africa. It's a dream that we've carried forward, sometimes through stormy waters, sometimes at great cost, for more than 2 centuries. And for my own sake, I'm grateful they made those journeys, because if they hadn't, you'd be listening to somebody else speak right now. And for America's sake, we're grateful so many others from this land took that chance as well. After all, never has a nation so small inspired so much in another. Irish signatures are on our founding documents. Irish blood was spilled on our battlefields. Irish sweat built our great cities. Our spirit is eternally refreshed by Irish story and Irish song. Our public life by the humor and heart and dedication of servants with names like Kennedy and Reagan, O'Neill and Moynihan. So you could say there's always been a little green behind the red, white, and blue. When the father of our country, George Washington, needed an army, it was the fierce fighting of your sons that caused the British official to lament, "We have lost America through the Irish." And as George Washington said himself, when our friendless standards were first unfurled, who were the strangers who first mustered around our staff? And when it reeled in the light, who more brilliantly sustained it than Aaron's generous sons? When we strove to blot out the stain of slavery and advance the rights of man, we found common cause with your struggles against oppression. Frederick Douglass, an escaped slave, and our great abolitionist forged an unlikely friendship right here in Dublin with your great liberator, Daniel O'Connell. His time here, Frederick Douglass said, defined him not as a color, but as a man. And it strengthened the nonviolent campaign he would return home to wage. And recently, some of their descendants met here in Dublin to commemorate and continue that friendship between Douglass and O'Connell. When Abraham Lincoln struggled to preserve our young Union, more than 100,000 Irish and Irish Americans joined the cause, with units like the Irish Brigade charging into battle, green flags with gold harp waving alongside our Star-Spangled Banner. When depression gripped America, Ireland sent tens of thousands of packages of shamrocks to cheer up its countrymen, saying, "May the message of Aaron Shamrocks bring joy to those away." And when an Iron Curtain fell across this continent and our way of life was challenged, it was our first Irish president, our first Catholic president, John F. Kennedy, who made us believe 50 years ago this week that mankind could do something big and bold and ambitious as walk on the moon. He made us dream again. That is the story of America and Ireland. That's the tale of our brawn and our blood, side by side, in making and remaking a nation. Pulling it westward, pulling it skyward, moving it forward again and again and again. And that is our task again today. I think we all realize that both of our nations have faced great trials in recent years, including recession so severe that many of our people are still trying to fight their way out. And naturally, our concern turns to our families, our friends, and our neighbors. And some in this enormous audience are thinking about their own prospects and their own futures. Those of us who are parents wonder what it will mean for our children and young people like so many who are here today. Will you see the same progress we've seen since we were your age? Will you inherit futures as big and as bright as the ones that we inherited? Will your dreams remain alive in our time? This nation has faced those questions before. When your land couldn't feed those who tilled it. When the boats leaving these shores held some of your brightest minds. When brother fought against brother. Yours is a history frequently marked by the greatest of trials and the deepest of sorrow. But yours is also a history of proud and defiant endurance. Of a nation that kept alive the flame of knowledge in dark ages, that overcame occupation and outlived fallow fields, that triumphed over its troubles. Of a resilient people who beat all the odds. And Ireland, as trying as these times are, I know our future is still as big and as bright as our children expect it to be. I know that because I know it is precisely in times like these, in times of great challenge, in times of great change, when we remember who we truly are. We're peoples, the Irish and Americans, who never stop imagining a brighter future, even in bitter times. We're people who make that future happen through hard work and through sacrifice, through investing in those things that matter most, like family and community. We remember, in the words made famous by one of your greatest poets, that in dreams begin responsibility. This is a nation that met that responsibility by choosing, like your ancestors did, to keep alight the flame of knowledge, invest in a world-class education for your young people. And today, Ireland's youth and those who come back to build a new Ireland are now among the best educated, most entrepreneurial in the world. And I see those young people here today, and I know that Ireland will succeed. This is a nation that met its responsibilities by choosing to apply the lessons of your own past, to assume a heavier burden of responsibility on the world stage. And today, people who once knew the pain of an empty stomach now feed those who hunger abroad. Ireland is working hand in hand with the United States to make sure that hungry mouths are fed around the world, because we remember those times. We know what crippling poverty can be like. We want to make sure that we're helping others. You're a people who modernized and can now stand up for those who can't yet stand up for themselves. And this is a nation that met its responsibilities and inspired the entire world by choosing to see past the scars of violence and mistrust to forge a lasting peace on this island. When President Clinton said at this very spot 15 years ago, waging peace is risky, I think those who were involved understood the risks they were taking, but you, the Irish people, persevered. And you cast your votes. And you made your voices heard for that peace. And you responded heroically when it was challenged. And you did it, as President McKinley has written, for all the apparent intractability of our problems, the irrepressible human impulse to love kept nagging and nudging us towards reconciliation. Whenever peace is challenged, you will have to sustain that irrepressible impulse, and America will stand by you, always. America will stand by you, always, in your pursuit of peace. And Ireland, you need to understand that you've already so surpassed the world's highest hopes that what was notable about the Northern Ireland elections 2 weeks ago was that they came and went without much attention. It's not because the world has forgotten. It's because this once unlikely dream has become that most extraordinary of things. It has become real. A dream has turned to reality because of the work of this nation. In dreams begin responsibility. And embracing that responsibility, working toward it, overcoming the cynics and the naysayers and those who say you can't. That's what makes dreams real. That's what Fulmouth Carney did when he got on that boat. And that's what so many generations of Irish men and women have done here in this spectacular country. That is something we can point to and show our children, Irish and American alike. That is something we can teach them as they grow up together in a new century, side by side, as it has been since our beginnings. This little country that inspires the biggest things, your best days are still ahead. Our greatest triumphs in America and Ireland alike are still to come. And Ireland, if anyone ever says otherwise, if anybody ever tells you that your problems are too big, or your challenges are too great, that we can't do something, that we shouldn't even try, think about all that we've done together. Remember that whatever hardships the winter may bring, springtime's always just around the corner. And if they keep on arguing with you, just respond with a simple creed. Is Federling? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. It's Federling for all you've contributed to the character of the United States of America and the spirit of the world. Thank you. And may God bless the eternal friendship between our two great nations. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Dublin. Thank you, Ireland.
A rock. Dort ist vor ein paar Tagen ein Vulkan ausgebrochen. Dort sah es also vor ein paar Tagen noch richtig schön weiß aus. Hier der Gletscher. Sie sehen dieses Weiße, deutlich zeichnet sich vom Land ab, sind keine Wolken. Und gestern nun sah man zum Beispiel diesen Ruß und diesen Schwefel und diesen Rauch letztendlich, der auch ein bisschen nach Norden transportiert wird. Man sieht diesen Schatten hier so etwas. Aber heute hat der Wind gedreht auf Nord. Und da kam das Ganze dann wieder nach Süden voran. Hier oben liegt Island. Und Sie sehen diese Aschewolke, diesen Schwefel. Ja, und der wird langsam auch wieder nach Europa transportiert.
Der isländische Vulkan Grímsvötn beeinträchtigt weiter den europäischen Luftverkehr. Experten gehen davon aus, dass die Aschewolke jetzt Richtung Europa zieht. In Schottland und Norwegen wurden bereits zahlreiche Flüge gestrichen.
With the suit and hatch leak checks complete, the International Space Station was maneuvered on Russian thrusters a short time ago to the undocking attitude. This will set the stage for the actual command to begin the unlatching of hooks and latches that will begin with that command at 4:32 p.m. Central Time. 3 minutes later, physical separation will occur between the two vehicles. Again, the actual physical separation between the two vehicles is scheduled at 4:35 p.m. Central Time. 3 minutes later, Dmitry Kondratyev will perform a manual separation burn of about 1 meter per second, which will take the Soyuz out to a range of about 22 meters. Then he will continue to back out to a distance of 180 meters and begin a period of station keeping at 4:41 p.m. Central Time. Paolo Nespoli at this point will open up the hatch between the descent module and the upper portion, the orbital module. He will unstrap himself from his seat, move into the habitation module with a digital camera and an HD camera, and set up for photo, video, and laser range finding operations. Meanwhile, the space station at that point will return to the original undocking attitude from an interim orientation. Some 23 minutes after the undocking occurs, the International Space Station will begin a 129-degree maneuver. That's about 0.2 of a degree per second over a period of about 15 minutes to an orientation designed to provide the best perspective of the International Space Station and the docked Endeavour space shuttle for Nespoli. The plan currently has Nespoli beginning his photography and video acquisition operations about 5 minutes prior to the start of that maneuver. He'll continue to capture still images and HD video for about 10 minutes after the maneuver is complete at about 5:20 p.m. Central Time. From time to time, Nespoli is expected to pause those imagery operations as required to provide Kondratyev with range readings with his laser range finding device. The station keeping period will end when Kondratyev performs a second separation burn at about 5:15 p.m. Central Time. That will be a 20-second burn of about 3/4 of a meter per second to begin an opening rate that ultimately will place the Soyuz some 12 kilometers away from the International Space Station for its deorbit burn that is scheduled at 8:36 and 51 seconds p.m. Central Time this evening. Meanwhile, we're about 2.5 hours away from the point at which the search and recovery forces, the Rosaeronavigatia forces, along with personnel from NASA, the European Space Agency, and the Russian Federal Space Agency will be departing their quarters in the town of Zhezkazgan in south-central Kazakhstan. They will begin to make their way to a tiny airstrip in Zhezkazgan and board a series of helicopters to begin deploying to both the prime landing site and to the southwest at a ballistic landing site, which would become necessary for recovery operations in the unlikely event the Soyuz would encounter a problem that would have it land short of its intended target. In all, there are 12 Russian Mi-8 helicopters in operation for tonight's landing and recovery activities, along with 3 fixed-wing Antonov spacecraft, one of which will serve as a flying command center to relay communications between the Soyuz, as well as global positioning system GPS data regarding the Soyuz's exact position as it lands on the steppe of Kazakhstan. 6 all-terrain vehicles are also in play today, 3 of which will be at the prime landing site, actually 4 of which will be at the prime landing site, 3 of which will back up to the medical tent in which the crew will be placed in to get out of their Sokol launch and entry suits after they're extracted from the Soyuz capsule and placed in reclining chairs in the morning hours of Tuesday to begin to acclimate to a gravity environment for the first time in almost 5.5 months. Those Russian Mi-8 helicopters will begin to make their way from Zhezkazgan and from the staging site in Karaganda to the northeast of there, right around the time of the deorbit burn and shortly thereafter, to be in a position in a circular pattern around the landing zone to facilitate landing operations. Within minutes after touchdown, which is expected at 9:26 and 41 seconds p.m. Central Time this evening, which is 8:26 a.m. in Kazakhstan on Tuesday morning, the search and recovery forces as well as RSC and Nergia personnel will be on the ground in the first series of helicopters to begin to open up the hatch to the Soyuz TMA-20 and extract the crew members one by one, again placing them in reclining chairs to allow them a few minutes of acclimation time to a gravity environment before they are carried in those chairs into the medical tent to be helped out of their launch and entry suits and into more comfortable clothing. They will be driven in those all-terrain vehicles to 3 different helicopters, 1 for each crew member, to begin a 2-hour helicopter ride back to Karaganda, where a short welcoming ceremony in traditional Kazakh fashion will await them. At that point, the crew will split up, with Nespoli and Coleman boarding a NASA plane for the flight back to Houston, and Nespoli boarding I should say Kondratiev boarding a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center plane by himself with support personnel for the flight, about a 3-hour flight back to the Chkalovsky airfield just outside of Star City, where he will be reunited with his family and Russian space officials.
Yep, I will. I'll just finish these and I'll do that.
Yeah, thanks. The International Space Station is currently flying 220 miles over Southeast Asia near the Myanmar-Laos border, moving from southwest to northeast and in orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. A good view of the Soyuz TMA-20 docked to the Rosviet module, where it has resided since December 17th of last year.
Go ahead. Andrei, you should be seeing something at this time. Yeah, I see some static on the screen, but I'm still showing data not available on SSC.
Part of the search and recovery team that is on the scene in Kazakhstan includes a variety of NASA personnel. Kirk Shireman, the Deputy International Space Station Program Manager, along with Joel Montalbano, the Director of Human Spaceflight Operations in Russia, the appropriate flight surgeons, Steve Hart, Dr. Steve Hart, Katie Coleman's flight surgeon, along with European Space Agency personnel, Josh Byerly, NASA Public Affairs Officer, and the NASA Chief Photographer, Bill Ingalls, all on the scene in Zhezkazgan, ready to board helicopters and fly out in sequence in several hours en route to the landing site to assist and document the recovery of the Expedition 27 crew. At the moment of undocking, Expedition 27 is over. Expedition 28 begins under the command of Andrei Botasenko, who took over station command yesterday. The 28th increment of expeditions to the International Space Station, soon to begin with undocking just moments from now.
Подтверждаю.
10.
Подтверждаю.
Готов.
Есть. Суд Москвы выдана команда. Пуск. Чайки до 02800. Принято. Включаю исполнение. Есть форматор 4.
Есть СКАП, плюс 1.1, плюс 1.2. Индикаторный режим.
Can you repeat for me, please? Sure. Yeah, thank you. Переходим к странице 83.
Есть.
Есть цепка.
ISS Moscow on space to ground. 2. Yes, you were correct. That was step 1.
This view from a balcony camera overlooking the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside Moscow, where Russian flight controllers are in control of tonight's operations, overseeing Soyuz systems, the Russian segment systems of the International Space Station. Everything in order. The undocking command is expected to be issued about 2.5 minutes from now, leading to the physical separation of the vehicles 5.5 minutes from now.
17. Подтверждаю. Обратно выдаю команду В-15. Дисплей ТВ. Подтверждаю. Дисплей В4 погас. Есть картинка, наблюдаем. Выдаю команду Р7. Широкий объектив включен. Не нужно. Не нужно. ССП. Формат ССП ПАО.
ССП.
Суд Москвы наблюдаем. ОСК предупредить КВ. Есть инструкция. 6. Проверяем. Диод питания не горит. Т-16. Не горит. 31:00 через 40 секунд выдай команду ССП. Подготовить команду.
The motion control system for the Soyuz TMA-20 vehicle has been activated by Soyuz commander Dmitry Kondratyev. He is strapped into the center seat of the descent module, the crew compartment. That's the middle compartment of the three-compartment Soyuz spacecraft. To his left, board engineer Paolo Nespoli of the European Space Agency. To Kondratyev's right is NASA flight engineer Katie Coleman.
Суд Москвы, ВРК-1.
10 секунд.
Подтверждаю. МТ, ВРК-1, как меня слышно?
Я даю, а?
Выдаем.
Дим, как слышно? Хорошо слышно, Дим.
Слышь? Стаж слышно хорошо. Готовы команду на расстыковку Д-17 в 00:32 через минуту. Подготовить Д-17. В случае попадания связи будем выдавать.
Дима, выдаем установленное время команду на расстыковку Д-17.
Вас поняли. 00:32:00.
Готов.
Принял.
Подтверждаю.
Наблюдаем картину на ВКУ.
The International Space Station has been placed in what is called free drift, all thrusters now disabled, and the docking mechanism has been powered up to initiate the command seconds from now that will open up hooks and latches that have held the Soyuz TMA-20 firmly to the Rosviet module on the nadir port of the Russian segment of the International Space Station since December 17th.
Суд Москвы, Варяг-1, выдана команда Д-17, заданное время 00:32:00. Транспарантники закрыт погас.
The visiting vehicle officer reports that hooks and latches now driving open. The International Space Station and the attached Endeavour space shuttle flying 220 miles over the South China Sea.
Подготовить секундомер.
Готов.
По моей команде включить.
Принято.
Варяги, после расхождения проконтролируйте отсутствие посторонних предметов в плоскости стыковочного механизма.
Вас поняли по возможности.
Springs on either side of the docking interface between the Soyuz TMA-20 spacecraft and the Rosviet module will push off against one another about a minute and a half from now, inducing the physical separation between the two vehicles. That will initiate a separation rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second. Then 2 minutes after physical separation, Kondratiev will fire the Soyuz thrusters for 30 seconds in an initial separation burn, the first of two, to further create an opening rate that will result in the Soyuz drifting to a distance of about 180 meters away from the Rosviet module and the initiation of this unprecedented imagery acquisition exercise. This is the first time that a Soyuz has undocked while a shuttle has been docked at the International Space Station. Less than 30 seconds away from physical separation.
Есть погасание механизации 1. Право подготовиться к сходоверу.
Готов.
Undocking confirmed.
Подтверждаю.
Погасание декатного режима. Есть ГСО 1-2.
GSO 1-2 confirmed. OVK command issue. RO OK OVK 1-8.
Yes. Есть декатный режим.
Indicator mode confirmed. Okay, press confirm Bdose 1-1.
Everything looking good in the initial separation of the Soyuz TMA-20.
No FOD visible at the docking interface.
Kondratiev, Coleman, and Nespoli bidding farewell to the International Space Station after 157 days on board.
Selection to A9.
Undocking occurring at 4:35 p.m. Central Time as the International Space Station and Endeavour pass 220 miles over eastern China.
Give it to me, please. Like this. Yep. And at that table.
Yep, ready.
Careful.
Absolutely.
And control заход.
Moscow Varag 1. Observing separation. 1 minute 20 seconds. Have a lap. Copy that, Dima. Activate program 3. Paolo, please issue G5 to activate program 3. Inward. G5 has been issued. Program 3 has been activated. Inaudible. Yes, I can confirm.
About 40 seconds away from the first of two separation burns.
2 minutes have elapsed. Separation is stable. Observing the docking assembly. Copy.
Visual дальность 15.
Visual range 1-5, time 2:30.
15 секунд до начала выдачи импульса на отвод.
15 seconds to separation burn.
10 секунд.
10 seconds.
Есть работа ДПО? Есть.
DPO is in operation. Back out burn is in progress.
The first of two separation burns underway. Kondratiev at the controls. 5 days after the arrival of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, the Soyuz TMA-20 departs, heading for a landing in south-central Kazakhstan.
5 seconds to shut down.
There's your unprecedented portrait, at least from station cameras, the Space Shuttle Endeavour in the final days of its final mission, and the Soyuz TMA-20 against the limb of the Earth.
Varagi Moscow, you can turn off the light. Command S18. Copy. Maneuver in progress. Continuing back out. Inaudible. Hello, Igor.
We should be arriving at the station keeping point about 2 minutes from now, at which point Kondratiev will put the brakes on basically and begin a period of station keeping at a distance of about 180 meters, enabling Paolo Nespoli to unstrap from his seat on the left side of the descent module and open the hatch back up to the habitation module to make his way in with a digital camera and a high-definition camera for the start of imagery acquisition.
ATV is in the line of sight. Copy. Visual range 115.
This view from the external camera on the Soyuz TMA-20. Now 155 meters away from the Rosviet module, continuing a separation rate.
Do you need to see this one?
Second.
The big one, do you need to see the big one? I know you
Yes, yes, both.
Okay.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Space Shuttle Endeavour in view on the lower right side of your picture. Again, this is the engineering overlay view that Russian flight controllers use for data as the Soyuz separates from the International Space Station.
Copy.
Once the Soyuz vehicle reaches its station-keeping position, the International Space Station will return to its original undocking attitude. Paolo Nespoli is expected to begin his photography activities and his imagery acquisition with a high-definition camera about 8.5 minutes from now.
Okay, SM as reference. 1 cell and a quarter. At that point, we are going to start braking. Concur.
Standing by for Kondratiev to initiate impulses in his hand controller that will initiate the braking for station keeping.
Continuing separation. Okay. What is the approximate range? We have slowed down The range is about 170. Copy.
170 meters separating Soyuz from the International Space Station. Again, this view from the Soyuz camera, an external black and white engineering camera, but this approximates the same view that Paolo Nespoli will be getting when he makes his way into the upper portion of the Soyuz, the habitation module.
180, start braking. Let's wait a little more. Let's wait until we reach 200. Okay, copy.
"180 meters separating Soyuz from the station, braking underway, station keeping about to begin."
Okay, copy. Range is 180. Ready for the roll.
The station will reinitiate its maneuver back into an undocking attitude, and the Soyuz now beginning a roll maneuver. This essentially will place the so-called blister window in the upper portion of the Soyuz and the habitation module, through which Paolo Nespoli will be using as his vantage point for digital photography and HD video acquisition. This puts the Soyuz and the station in the proper orientations against one another. The International Space Station then will begin a maneuver to the photography attitude about 11 minutes from now.
Please repeat. Program 3 commanding issue G5 one more time. Copy in work. G5 has been issued.
Momentarily, as soon as station keeping is initiated, Nespoli will unstrap from his left seat in the descent module, the crew compartment, and make his way up into the habitation module. The hatch between the habitation module and the descent module will have to be closed once again at the end of this imagery activity, and leak checks will have to be reinitiated both for the hatch and for the crew's suits.
Range 210. Copy. How many to the ground and to ATV? A lot, about 5. Okay, let's move up a little bit. Copy. And also please check pressure in SA and PO. Moscow.
The International Space Station, Endeavour, and the Soyuz TMA-20 flying south of the Aleutian Islands, 220 miles above the Earth, moving from northwest to southeast across the North Pacific.
On the overlay is 3. We're going to maintain that number. Copy. Please report pressure in the habitation module. 813 is pressure in SA, 745 in BO. Range is 200. Okay. Dima, let's
that
reduce
caution
the rate
on S11
translational
and it lost power.
And lateral. You can find the equilibrium position by operating the RUD and then maintain that position so that the overlay distance between vehicle and the ground is stable. Copy. And it is stable. Paolo can start translating. Copy that. Paolo is go to open KVD. Paolo, please open KVD. We hear hissing. Equalization is in progress.
Мы давление бытовом отсеке как только стабилизирует. Понимаем, докладываем.
Zima, please report pressure in habitation module 1.
The visiting vehicle officer reports that the pressure is now being equalized between the habitation module and the descent module, the precursor to the opening of that hatch, the reopening of that hatch by Nespoli, so he can make his way into the upper portion of the Soyuz to begin his imagery acquisition.
Zima, what is the current prop quantity on board? 565. Copy, 565. What about SA off pressure?
We passed out of range of our tracking and data relay satellite system, transitioning coverage to another satellite. We'll pick up coverage a few minutes from now. Everything continuing to go per the schedule, per the timeline. The Soyuz TMA-20 undocking on time at 4:35 p.m. Central Time as the International Space Station and the attached Endeavour space shuttle flew 220 miles over eastern China. 3 minutes later, a separation burn was executed by Soyuz commander Dmitry Kondratyev. The Soyuz separated to a distance of almost 200 meters away from the Rassvet module to which it had been attached since December 17th. Pressure is now being equalized between the crew compartments, the descent module as it is called, and the habitation module, the upper portion, that bulbous portion at the top of the Soyuz vehicle. Once the pressure is equalized, Nespoli will open up the hatch, unbuckle himself from his seat in the descent module and make his way basically upstairs a short distance to begin his imagery acquisition. All of this activity has to be completed before we pass into orbital sunset at about 20 minutes after the hour.
Go ahead, reporting as Sabo hatch is open, FE1 is translating.
And with that call, the hatch now open to the habitation module. Paolo Nespoli, equipped with a digital camera and a high-definition video camera, making his way upstairs, basically, to begin his imagery acquisition. Dmitry Kondratyev remains in control of the Soyuz in the center seat of the descent module. To his right, Katie Coleman, the NASA flight engineer. Nespoli also equipped with a laser range-finding device that will provide Kondratyev with periodic readings on his distance and his ability to maintain station keeping at the correct distance from the International Space Station.
You know that, Paolo. Thank you.
Moscow, Varyak 1. FE1, Varyak 2 is in habitation module. Copy. Okay, you can start working with the extension hardware, and you can put the hatch in the almost closed position to avoid interference.
Nespoli at this point is free to begin photography. The International Space Station itself will begin a 129-degree maneuver That's about 0.2 of a degree per second for 15 minutes into an orientation designed to present the best perspective of the International Space Station and Endeavour to Nespoli for his imagery acquisition. This is not a fly around, not a fly about even. It's the station is doing all the flying at this point. The Soyuz remains stationary, and after the photography and the video acquisition is complete, another separation burn will be executed to enable the Soyuz to drift to a distance of 12 kilometers away from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn that is scheduled at 8:36 p.m. Central Time tonight.
Program 3 command. Yes, I have. Maintaining 3 degrees. Okay, we are standing by for range measurements by Paolo.
It's okay.
Where is it?
On the left. Hold it on the left. Hold it on the left. Towards my feet.
I cannot tell.
Okay, it's okay.
Wait, it's not okay.
With the possibility of a brief dropout, we should have continuous KU band downlink television capability through the U.S. communications system and the tracking and data relay satellite system through about 23 minutes after the hour and the completion of the video and digital still photography acquisition.
Talking over each other. Have ventilation.
I'm waiting for for an acknowledgement.
Ventilation is on, and I can feel it.
I feel the station.
I want you to take pictures. Give me the mark, okay?
Okay. Roger, I'm ready. I'm taking pictures already.
Andrei, we're ready for imagery. Okay, issuing F22-1, parameter 1 is 7, parameter 2 is 0. Copy. Command has been issued. Copy.
Есть пропадание общего ГСО.
Принял.
Total GSO is not visible. Copy.
The International Space Station has now begun its slow maneuver. This now presents all of the elements of the International Space Station and the Space Shuttle Endeavour to Nespoli, the onboard videographer and digital still photographer.
The 2 dashes. When the maneuver is complete, we will correct the attitude. Inaudible. Copy. Standing by for the station maneuver.
The Soyuz, the International Space Station, Endeavour, traveling from northwest to southeast to the west of Baja California at an altitude of 220 statute miles.
Should I take video yet or not?
Yeah, go ahead. Take a measurement distance to the station once.
Okay, like I said, I'm in a zone. I let it warm up a second.
Дальность 200.
Visual range 200. Copy.
Good view of the Soyuz TMA-20. Apollo Nespoli in the upper portion, the habitation module, using a digital still camera and a high-definition video camera to take a celestial portrait of a complex more than 1 million pounds in mass with the attached Space Shuttle Endeavour. We're handing over between satellites. We'll regain our downlink television capability momentarily.
Can I give me distance?
Not yet.
Not speed.
Ready.
Not on speed.
Yeah, no, not ready.
Dmitry, is it working out for the LDE measurements? And by one. Paulo is working on it at this time.
On the SM?
Yes, sir.
Behind the vertical tail fin of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, the Soyuz TMA-20, a carefully choreographed ballet 220 statute miles above the Earth for imagery acquisition unprecedented in nature.
It doesn't give any distance. It's zero all the time. Bang on the lab.
Yeah, okay.
Zero on the lab. Shuttle. Zero. Always read zero, Dima.
Okay, copy. Continue shooting.
You can see near the center of the crosshairs, that's the Johannes Kepler automated transfer vehicle from the European Space Agency, the cargo carrying vehicle that will undock itself on June 20th from the aft end of the Zvezda service module and be disposed in the Pacific Ocean.
I'll try not to move there, okay?
Okay, I'm still.
Thanks.
Дима? Please keep monitoring on the ROSK and reporting. Yes, range is 200.
Paul, how does the station look?
Good. Tilted 45 degrees.
Concur.
Looks very clear.
This is beautiful.
It's very nice. Earth looks really nice. Ocean, cloud,
you doing video when you're supposed to, Paolo?
Not yet. I just did a little bit of video. You need to remind me because...
Yeah, go ahead.
When should I remind you?
Every 3 minutes, Paolo?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Can you please count this?
Yep.
3 minutes. Thank you.
Kondratiev and Coleman providing Nespoli with time cues and visual cues, reminding him that he also needs to be taking video.
I always get 0. I don't know why.
Okay.
Try again on the shuttle belly.
That's okay. Stop taking.
Я попробовал, но... No.
Can you try for SCP? I tried. It said 000. Okay, it means that you're not aligning.
You still video, Paolo?
Not yet. I'm going to video. Video's on.
Flying to the west of Ecuador, the shuttle station complex in view of the Soyuz TMA-20.
How long are you supposed to video, Paolo?
A couple of minutes.
That's 40 seconds.
Visually ranges 200 to node 1. Do you mind need the prop number? 524. I copy. 524.
This view of the Soyuz TMA-20, its jets firing to maintain a rock-solid hold on station keeping at a distance of 200 meters from the shuttle station complex.
1 minute, Paolo.
Copy.
TV, 200.
Range 200.
Солнечная батарея несколько ближе.
Solar arrays are somewhat closer. We copy.
This is essentially the view that Paolo Nespoli is also seeing.
Топливо 521.
Prop 521.
The only other time that a shuttle was photographed docked to a space station was the Mir space station on July 4th, 1995, near the completion of the docked phase of the STS-71 mission, the first time a shuttle had docked to the Mir space station.
9, activate program 3. Okay, copy. 103.
Okay, I'm going to Stula.
Yes, go. 3 minutes.
Copy.
Now flying west of Peru, a good view down the longitudinal axis of the International Space Station, Endeavour on the left.
Range 200. We copy.
Как ощущения, Дмитрий? Мы немножко влево ушли.
How are you feeling, Dmitry? Do you think we have shifted to the left a little bit to the side?
Напротив стоите, да?
По боку не влево, я стараюсь. Нет, станция разворачивается.
No, well, the station is maneuvering.
Нет, станция не двигается.
No.
Center mass
The center of mass is not moving. ATV is moving, but the center of mass of the station is not moving. Okay, can you repeat program 3? Absolutely.
2.5 down, Paolo.
Berlin, copy.
David, can I move this? Can I hold it?
No.
It's in my way.
Yeah. Go ahead.
6. It's 2 minutes, Paolo.
Okay.
Визуально далее сдайте Ви 210. Передайте 210.
Visually, the range is 200. Okay, we copy 200.
About 10 minutes of usable imagery time left before the complex will fly into an orbital sunset just off the west coast of South America.
Okay. Give me 2. Oh, okay, before the impulse, okay?
Okay. Москва готова, будем выдать импульс на отвод.
MCC Moscow, we
15:00. Skype принят.
We are ready to perform back-away burn at 01:15:00. Okay, we copy.
Принял, подтвердили.
The back-away burn mentioned by Dmitry Kondratyev is the second of the 2 manual separation burns. This will be a 20-second firing of the Soyuz thrusters, about a 0.7 meter per second burn to initiate a final opening rate from the International Space Station. That is expected to occur about 3 minutes from now. Shortly after that, the photography and video acquisition will be completed. Nespoli will leave the habitation module and close the hatch for the initiation of a second series of leak checks between the habitation module and the descent module.
Between ATV and the Earth surface.
Copy.
3 to the maneuver.
Дим, дай, пожалуйста, еще раз параметр топлива.
Dima, please give us the parameter again, 503.
Дальность 200 визуально.
Range visually is 200.
503.
Here we copy 503.
Paul, 2 minutes to go.
Copy.
That's 2 minutes of video.
Copy, thank you. Okay, stop video, taking pictures.
1 minute to go.
Copy.
Nespoli has completed operations with the high-definition camera on board, now in a position to use his digital camera for some final images before he departs the habitation module. In advance of that, he will make sure that he removes all of the cards from those 2 cameras and stow those cameras in the habitation module. They will burn up with that section of the Soyuz spacecraft.
MCC Moscow, please confirm that at 01:15 we perform the back-away burn. Yes, we confirm the 20-second burn. Copy.
Визуально дальность 20, 200, 200.
Visually, the range ATV is 200. We copy 200.
Standing by for the execution of the second separation burn by Kondratiev just seconds from now.
Топливо 491.
291 for prop. We copy.
Время выдачи импульса.
Time of burn.
Выдаем импульс на тот повод.
The second separation burn has been executed by Dmitry Kondratiev as the shuttle station complex and the Soyuz TMA-20 sail into an orbital sunset. This burn will enable the Soyuz to resume an opening rate from the International Space Station that will place the Soyuz about 12 kilometers away from the complex for its deorbit burn of 4 minutes and 15 seconds that will be executed at 8:36 and 51 seconds p.m. Central Time tonight, beginning the descent back to Earth for Kondratiev, Nespoli, and Coleman.
I don't have Earth anymore. Дима, выдаем И-13.
Dima, please send the E-13 command.
Выдаем И-13.
All right, and work.
1 секунду.
1 second.
Okay, I'm going to video. Yes, CDR.
CDR confirm.
И дальше по 4.
Now, for page 84, perform the final off. I copied.
Nespoli will be departing the habitation module moments from now. The shuttle station complex and the Soyuz crossing the Chilean coast.
Включаем рут В8. Включаем Е1. Включаем Г4.
Activating D1, D4.
Есть Г4. Выдаю команду.
Sending the D8 command.
Отключаю СП. Отключено. И дай нам еще раз.
And also give me another confirmation.
Хорошо, принял, выдаю.
Okay, now I am sending the
Отключаем видеоключок.
V18 command.
Топливо 484 килограмм.
Prop 484 kilogram. 484, we copy.
Видеоключал включен. Наблюдаю перекладку ВСК. Принято. Выключаю ПРВИ. Параметр КДУ. Давление турбоводов. Первая секция 163, вторая 170.
Pressure in the tank 161, oxidizer in section 1, reading the numbers. Prop 17.0, second one is 16.0.
Принято.
Okay, we copy.
Так, приняли. Да, Дим, все
No copy, yes, we copied all.
4, остальные
Prop 484, we copied the rest of the parameters as well.
Павло может переходить.
So Paulo now can move to the descent module.
Ну, не торопясь, то есть...
Take your time. No rush.
В бытовом отсеке фото-видеоаппаратуру,
you can unstow the photo TV equipment, put it in the container. Don't forget to take the memory card. Okay, we copy.
A last-minute reminder by Russian flight controllers to Nespoli and to make sure that he removes the cards from the high-definition camera and the digital camera that he used for about 20 minutes of imagery acquisition during this unprecedented activity to capture the Space Shuttle Endeavour and the other elements of the International Space Station orbiting 220 miles above the Earth. Nespoli will make his way back into the descent module, close the hatch above him to the orbital or habitation module, at which point the crew will reinitiate a second series of leak checks to make sure that there's an airtight seal between those two compartments, since they are pyrotechnically separated from one another. Just a few minutes before atmospheric entry en route back to the landing site in south-central Kazakhstan.
Couple of minutes. Copy. Copy. Copy, thank you.
This is Mission Control Houston. The report from the Russian ballistics officers from the search and recovery forces in Kazakhstan report shoot deploy, and the search and recovery forces now have a visual on the Soyuz TMA-20 on track for landing 12.5 minutes from now. The drogue chute was the first chute to be deployed, followed by a main chute deployment that will ultimately slow the Soyuz down to enable its soft landing engines to fire just a few feet off of the steppe of Kazakhstan. All of the search and recovery helicopters are now in place in a circular pattern around the prime landing zone. Everything is on track for touchdown just 12 minutes from now. Once again, to recap, everything going extremely well with the return of Dmitry Kondratiev, Paolo Nespoli, and Katie Coleman following their 159 days in space, 157 of them aboard the International Space Station. Hatches were closed at 1:45 p.m. Central Time this afternoon. Undocking occurred less than 3 hours later at 4:35 p.m. Central Time. Kondratiev executed a separation burn to back the Soyuz away from the Rosviet module to a distance of almost 200 meters, where he initiated a period of station keeping to enable Paolo Nespoli to move inside the upper portion of the Soyuz, the habitation module, for about 20 minutes of imagery acquisition using a high-definition video camera and a digital still camera to capture an unprecedented view of the shuttle Endeavour mated to the International Space Station. With the video having been completed and the digital still acquisition having been completed, Nespoli moved back down into the descent module, closed the hatch above him to the habitation module. Leak checks were conducted to set the stage for a second separation burn at 5:15 p.m. Central Time that enabled the Soyuz to move away to a safe distance of 12 kilometers from the International Space Station for the deorbit burn of the Soyuz engines that was initiated at 8:36 p.m. Central Time, and to begin the trip home for the 3 crew members in the Soyuz vehicle. We're less than 10 minutes away now from the anticipated landing of the Soyuz vehicle. 12 Russian Mi-8 helicopters are in the vicinity of the landing site, about 147 kilometers southeast of Zhezkazgan. The staging area to the northeast in Karaganda also saw helicopters deployed earlier today. The 4 backup helicopters that were staged well to the southwest in the event of a ballistic entry no longer required, as the Soyuz is on target for what is hoped to be a pinpoint landing to the southeast of Zhezkazgan. The visiting vehicle officer reporting that the search and recovery forces are in direct communications with the Soyuz vehicle. And there is a live picture from the landing site in Kazakhstan of the Soyuz TMA-20 under its main chute, heading for a bullseye landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan, some 147 kilometers southeast of Zhezkazgan. The crew is reporting that they are feeling well, just 7.5 minutes from touchdown. Courtesy of the Russian Federal Space Agency, live video of Dmitry Kondratyev, Katie Coleman, Paulo Nespoli descending gently under their main chute to their landing site in south-central Kazakhstan, touchdown about 6 minutes away. Clear skies, balmy temperatures around 70 degrees to greet the trio following 159 days in space. In the descent module in the center seat, Soyuz Commander Dmitry Kondratyev, flanked by Paulo Nespoli of the European Space Agency and Katie Coleman of NASA, just minutes away now from completing their journey that began on December 15th with their launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Remarkable live views of the Soyuz in its descent under its main chute. All of the Russian helicopters in place, ready to touch down in sequential fashion after the Soyuz has landed, to begin the process of erecting an inflatable medical tent and extracting the crew into reclining chairs nearby the capsule. As the trio of space travelers begin a short acclimation to a gravity environment. There you can see one of the Russian Mi-8 helicopters circling in the neighborhood of the Soyuz spacecraft, a well distance away. If this view continues, we should get a good view of the soft landing engines firing just a few feet above the ground to provide one final braking maneuver and enable the Soyuz to gently touch down. The altimeter on the base of the Soyuz provides altitude information that causes the contoured Soyuz seatliners to inflate to provide an extra cushion against the backs of the three crew members in the descent module right before the impact of touchdown. Another one of the dozen Russian Mi-8 helicopters getting its own bird's eye view, as you can see them circling the Soyuz landing pattern as it approaches the landing zone. Touchdown is about 2 minutes away. The helicopters were deployed both from Zhezkazgan and Karaganda, which is the staging site. It is in Karaganda that the 3 crew members will be returned to. It's about a 2-hour helicopter ride to the landing site that the Soyuz is descending to. The 3 crew members will be placed in their own individual helicopters, accompanied by Russian nurses and their own flight surgeons, as well as NASA and European Space Agency and Russian Federal Space Agency personnel. For the trip back to Karaganda, a traditional Kazakh welcoming ceremony. Nespoli and Coleman will board a NASA plane to fly back to Houston. Kondratiev will board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to fly back to Chkalovsky Airfield outside of Star City. In stark contrast to the wintry conditions that greeted Scott Kelly and the Expedition 26 crew about 2 months ago, a clear day out on the steppe of Kazakhstan, temperatures around 70 degrees. Nearing the landing site now for touchdown. Touchdown now confirmed. The unofficial touchdown time, 9:27 p.m. Central Time, 8:27 a.m. Kazakhstan time. You saw the descent, the final descent under the chutes, almost all the way down to the ground. And the first of the dozen search and recovery helicopters has also landed. That is the helicopter with on-scene television equipment and the RSC Energia personnel that will begin the quick process of erecting an inflatable medical tent nearby. We should be reacquiring a television signal a short time from now. We are told by the visiting vehicle officer through reports from the search and recovery forces on the ground in Kazakhstan that the Soyuz landed upright vertically, which should expedite the extraction of the crew from the top of the vehicle. This was a textbook entry for Dmitry Kondratiev, Paolo Nespoli, and Katie Coleman. All of the functions of the Soyuz TMA-20 were by the book, no issues reported, and an upright landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan, about 147 kilometers to the southeast of Zhezkazgan. The visiting vehicle officer reports that 2 helicopters are now on the ground to begin the process of approaching the vehicle and extracting the crew. They will erect a small ladder along the side of the Soyuz spacecraft now that it landed vertically to open up the hatch at the top of the Soyuz vehicle and begin to pull the crew members out of their seats, have them rest for a moment or two at the top of the capsule before being assisted down that small ladder and into reclining chairs nearby the capsule. Once again, touchdown occurred unofficially at 9:27 p.m. Central Time. Everything appeared to be normal. You watched in real time as the Soyuz descended under its billowing main chute to a soft landing engine firing and a touchdown right on the mark, not far from where the all-terrain vehicles had been pre-positioned. With the safe touchdown of the Soyuz TMA-20, we'll be awaiting further reports here shortly on the extraction of the crew members. Hope to regain a live television signal from the landing site to watch that activity as it unfolds. Again, Everything went normally. The helicopters are now landing in sequential fashion to begin to attend to the crew, get them inside the medical tent so that they can remove their Sokol launch and entry suits, get initial medical checks from a variety of their own flight surgeons on hand as part of the search and recovery forces. And then to board 3 separate helicopters for a 2-hour flight back to Karaganda and a welcoming ceremony that awaits them before boarding individual or respective aircraft to begin the trip home. Again, Katie Coleman and Paolo Nespoli will fly on a NASA plane back to Houston from Karaganda. Dmitry Kondratiev will board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center plane to fly back to Chkalovsky Airfield outside of Star City. As is typically the case, as the helicopters land in sequential fashion nearby the capsule, it takes a few minutes for the personnel to make their way over to the spacecraft itself. The first 2 helicopters are currently in the process of attending to the initial safing of the vehicle, ensuring that there are no toxic leaks out of the Soyuz before they begin the process of extracting the crew. While the recovery and extraction of the returned crew members continues on the steppe of Kazakhstan, here in the flight control room at the Johnson Space Center, spacecraft communicator Hal Getzelman is talking to the 3 remaining expedition crew members on board the International Space Station, now comprising the Expedition 28 crew under the command of Andrei Barasenko, along with Alexander Samokhutyaev and NASA flight engineer Ron Garin, as they set the stage for that trio's activities in concert with the half-dozen crew members of the Space Shuttle Endeavour in this 6th day of joint operations. And now we have regained our live television signal from the landing site in Kazakhstan. You can see to the right the small ladder that has been erected along the side of the Soyuz TMA-20 spacecraft that landed vertically. The search and recovery personnel and RSC Energia personnel are in the process of opening up the top hatch to begin the extraction of the crew members one by one. It looks to be a very balmy day out at the landing site. The technicians from RSC Energia and other search and recovery personnel working to begin the process of extracting the crew members one by one. We should be seeing them in a matter of minutes. The recovery personnel are in the process of attending to the crew, extracting some of the initial equipment, helping the crew members unstrap from their contoured seats in the descent module, which landed upright, as you can see, on the steppe of Kazakhstan, following a gentle descent back to Earth under its main parachute, landing occurring at 9:27 p.m. Central Time. Within minutes, the helicopters, the dozen Russian Mi-8 helicopters, began to descend in sequential fashion to assist in the recovery of the crew and the safing of the spacecraft, which will be flown back to Moscow for post-flight analysis by Energia technicians. At the landing site in Kazakhstan is NASA Public Affairs Officer Josh Byerly, part of the Search and Recovery Forces team who flew to the landing site from Zhezkazgan earlier today. Josh, are you there, and can you give us, we just lost him on his satellite phone. I'm sure he'll be calling momentarily to reconnect to provide us an on-scene report. As you can see, the ladder erected at the side of the Soyuz spacecraft. As we await the extraction of the crew, they'll be placed in 3 reclining chairs nearby. You can see behind in the left-hand portion of your screen one of the Russian helicopters, one of the early helicopters that landed to provide the assistance, both technically and in the extraction of the crew. This process typically takes several minutes before the crew members are in a position to be extracted from the capsule. Typically a fairly swift process, particularly when the capsule lands upright as it did today. The first of the crew members now out of the Soyuz capsule. That's the Soyuz commander, Dmitry Kondratiev, home after 159 days in space and a flawless entry and landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. Back with us, Josh Byerly, NASA Public Affairs Officer at the landing site. Josh, it looks like a gorgeous day out there.
You actually could not ask for better weather, better operations. I mean, this has just been fairly easy from beginning to end. I mean, the weather's probably in the upper 70s right now. You can see they're taking the commander out now. They just got him out of the capsule. You also notice the capsule is actually upright, which doesn't happen too often. I took a look at the bottom of it. It doesn't look like it actually bounced that much. Like there's a divot in the ground probably 5 to 6 feet away from it, and that's it. So it's been pretty flawless so far from here in Kazakhstan. The weather is cooperating. The Russian teams here, the Search and Recovery Forces, are making quick work, as they always do, of these operations. And the entire NASA team has now arrived, even those that came directly from the city of Karaganda this morning, as well as those of us that came in from Zhezkazgan.
Josh Kondratiev, who trained for years for this first flight and as commander of Expedition 27, looks none the worse for wear. And we had remarkable live video of the Soyuz during its descent for several minutes before touchdown.
Yeah, actually, you know, you've done this several times, just like I have. It's rare when we actually get to see it out of the helicopter. You know, the media helicopter that gets here first gets to see it, but we actually could see it out our front windshield today, which is pretty remarkable. There's Katie. Katie is actually smiling hugely right now.
Katie Coleman, NASA astronaut, home after her 3rd flight in space, flashing the broad smile that is her signature. Now having logged 179 days in space on her 3 flights, also appearing to be in great shape. Josh?
Yeah, Katie is smiling like she always does, and they are beginning to move her over to the chairs. The crowd here is now clapping for her, and they also have some flowers they're about to give to her. But she looks extremely, extremely well.
The flight control team here in the ISS flight control room having a chuckle, since it only took 1 person to carry Katie Coleman to her reclining chair, as opposed to 2 that were required for Dmitry Kondratiev.
Yeah, I've actually never seen that before, but they, whoever that gentleman was moved her over there fairly quickly.
I must tell you, Josh, from what we can see here, at least for Kondratiev and Coleman, in all the times I've been out there and the times that you've been out there, I can't recall two crew members who have emerged from the Soyuz spacecraft appearing at least to be in better shape than these two.
No, I mean, you know, these Soyuz landings are definitely not for the faint of heart, and I think anybody you talk to that's ever been in one would tell you that. But no, this crew is looking better than most I've ever seen, and I don't know if it's a combination of the flight or the fact that they've got such beautiful weather down here. I mean, you know, sometimes, as you've experienced last time, this weather in Kazakhstan can be a bit jolting, to say the least. But, I mean, it's just a gorgeous day out here. The wind is just barely blowing. And the crew just looks fantastic.
Right by Katie Coleman is her flight surgeon, Dr. Steve Hart, and you saw just a moment ago, and he is appearing from time to time in the field of view, the Deputy ISS Program Manager, Kirk Shireman, part of the NASA team that is embedded with the search and recovery forces for this return of the Expedition 27 crew. We're awaiting the extraction of European Space Agency flight engineer Paolo Nespoli, who was the videographer and digital still photographer earlier today during the undocking and the backaway of the Soyuz from the Rosviet module. Now you can see Joel Montalbano next to Katie Coleman, the Director of Human Spaceflight Programs in Russia, and Peggy Whitson, the Chief of NASA's Astronaut Office, in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. Josh, it looks like Kondratiev first on the satellite phone to talk to family members back home.
Yeah, and they're going to give Katie the phone here in a little bit for her to talk to her family. Whenever I was talking to Steve Hart earlier today, there's two important things that he said that he had. One was the phone so Katie could call her family. The second thing was, of course, her passport, which is a little-known fact that these astronauts and cosmonauts actually do have to have passports because technically this is entering the country of Kazakhstan. So a little piece of trivia for you there. But Katie should be calling her family here shortly.
And there's your videographer and digital still photographer for today's portrait of the shuttle station complex, Paolo Nespoli, pausing for a moment at the top of the hatch of the Soyuz TMA-20 that again landed upright on the steppe of Kazakhstan. Nespoli served as the lead for the operations of the U.S. orbital segment of the International Space Station after Scott Kelly departed back in March.
Yeah. You know, I saw the station about an hour and a half before. So big. Oh, you don't get to see very much when you're living. No.
So how was the shuttle? Is it all going well?
You know, there's some they're well behaved. Hey, très bien. I don't think I did much.
Yeah.
Hey, Jared.
Oh, she's got some right here.
Hang on just a second. Okay, hang on just a second.
Nach 6 Monaten im All sind am Morgen 3 Raumfahrer aus der internationalen Raumstation ISS in der kasachischen Steppe gelandet. Die Kapsel hatte 5 Stunden zuvor von der ISS abgedockt. Es war das erste Mal, dass eine Soyuz-Kapsel zur Erde zurückkehrte, während ein US-Shuttle ebenfalls an der Raumstation hing.
CNN will have full coverage of Barack Obama's visit in London, starting with his arrival at Buckingham Palace in just a few hours from now. President Obama is fresh off his trip to Ireland, where he met with Prime Minister Enda Kenny. But Mr. Obama had to cut his Ireland visit short. Now, that was due to the volcanic ash cloud over Iceland, and our Ed Henry is travelling with the president and filed this report.
President Obama on a nearly week-long tour of Europe, 4 nations. He's starting, though, right here in Ireland, believe it or not, by exploring some of his family's Irish roots in Moneygall. His great-great-great-grandfather lived there, moved to the United States in the mid-1800s. President met one of his distant cousins, a young accountant in his 20s, here with the First Lady, the President, touring around. There were people waiting in Moneygall for over 3 hours in rain, hail, heavy winds, as you can see, that are still here in Ireland long after those events. While he was there, the President hoisted a pint of Guinness at a local pub, was joking about getting a chance to do that. Obviously, it felt a little bit like a campaign with the big crowds. He was also at a large rally outside Trinity College, people waving American flags. No voters here in Ireland, but certainly those 40 million Irish Americans on the president's mind as he gets ready for the 2012 re-election campaign. And the president will be moving on to some more serious business. His next stop is United Kingdom on Tuesday, where he'll be meeting with Prime Minister Cameron. They've got all kinds of issues of global finance, Mideast peace, as well as the war in military action in Libya. But then it's on to the G8 summit in France. The president wrapping this trip up at the end of the week in Poland.
The impact of Iceland's volcanic ash. Iceland's president says it will do some damage in his homeland, but he told our Piers Morgan he doesn't think the eruption will cause the kind of travel problems that Europe experienced last year.
We can be blessed here in Iceland that this hasn't really caused any damage to the people, but of course great difficulty to the farmers and the local people, especially the sheep farmers.
What kind of effect do you think this volcanic eruption will have on air traffic over the next few days? Last time we saw at least 2 weeks of chaos throughout Europe. Are you anticipating a similar situation this time?
No, definitely not. The flights started from Iceland yesterday afternoon, or actually this afternoon. And in fact, in terms of Europe, this is not going to be anywhere like what happened last year. It's a different eruption, and I think Europe is also better prepared to deal with it. There might be some difficulties in Scotland and in Scandinavia, but fortunately, I think we can truly say that the nature of this eruption will not cause similar disturbances as last year. But of course, it is a monumental eruption. It's the biggest one we have had in that area of Iceland for 140 years.
Des Vulkans Grímsvötn auf Island haben die Fluggesellschaften fast alle Flüge von und nach Schottland gestrichen. Außerdem kommt es durch den Vulkanausbruch bei einigen Transatlantikflügen zu Verspätungen. Übermorgen könnte die Aschewolke Frankreich und Spanien erreichen. Bei der EU in Brüssel heißt es, allen Flugpassagieren könne so wörtlich eine Woche voller Herausforderungen bevorstehen. Prominentestes Opfer der Aschewolke ist jetzt schon US-Präsident Obama. Er und seine Ehefrau Michelle mussten am Abend ihren Besuch in Irland vorzeitig abbrechen und sind direkt weiter nach London geflogen. Zuvor hatte es bereits in der US-Botschaft in Dublin, nennen wir es mal, eine kleine Panne gegeben. Der Cadillac des Präsidenten war in der Zufahrt auf einer Eisenschwelle hängen geblieben. Höhepunkt der Irlandreise war eine Rede vor 30.000 Zuschauern. Zuvor hatte Obama das Dorf besucht, aus dem die Vorfahren seiner Mutter stammen.
The disappointment of those who believed it was doomsday. So what happens when you truly believe the world is going to end and it doesn't? Our Jenny Mose finds out.
What was good news for most of us...
The world didn't come to an end.
The world did not end. We are still... ...was not such good news for the leader predicting Judgment Day. Knock, knock, who's there? Someone from the International Business Times looking for egg on the face of Harold Camping.
Give me a day. No interviews at all. This is a big deal, and I've got to live with it. I've got to think it out.
If you think it's bad coming to work after the weekend, imagine coming back to work when you're the guy who led people into believing in the rapture. Camping finally admitted on his radio program that he'd made a mistake.
If people want me to apologize, I can apologize. Yes, I did not have all of that worked out as accurately as I should have.
Now, he says, May 21st was the spiritual beginning of the end. The physical destruction will be in October.
The end is 5 months away now, but it won't be spiritual on October 21 because the Bible clearly teaches that then the world is going to be destroyed altogether.
Taiwanese animators mocked the leader of the Rapture believers, showing him high-fiving Jesus. Kids on YouTube rapped about Rapture.
RD, Rapture Day. Look right here, it's 6:02. I'm so alive, and so are you.
In response to Judgment Day billboards, non-believers raised enough money to post a counter billboard in Greensboro, North Carolina, saying that was awkward. Okay, so the rapture didn't happen. But if it had happened, it might have looked like this. The concept of all those people ascending to heaven with their clothes left behind inspired a flurry of rapture prank photos. Clothing left on a motorcycle, the dog left behind on the leash, from the toilet to the subway steps, complete with earbuds. The Rapture theme was played up on commuter trains.
What the hell?
And even poolside. At least one outfit was so fresh it was still smoking. And this couch potato was left behind, his family ruptured by the Rapture. Ginny Mo, CNN, New York.
Hey, and now we can wait till October. That wraps up this edition of World Report. I'm Rosemary Church. World Sport is next here on CNN. Stick around.
Serie von Tornados in den USA ist die Zahl der Toten auf mindestens 116 gestiegen. Am schwersten betroffen ist die Kleinstadt Joplin im Bundesstaat Missouri. Hier wurden mehr als 1000 Menschen verletzt. Rettungskräfte suchen noch immer nach Verschütteten unter den Trümmern. Vor 2 Tagen hatte ein Tornado mit einer Geschwindigkeit von 320 Kilometern in der Stunde zahlreiche Gebäude zerstört. In der kasachischen Steppe ist eine Soyuz-Kapsel mit 3 Raumfahrern an Bord sicher gelandet. Die Besatzung hatte 6 Monate auf der internationalen Raumstation verbracht. Ihre Rückreise dauerte knapp 5 Stunden. Mit zur Erde brachten sie Ergebnisse zahlreicher Experimente.
Der Ausbruch des isländischen Vulkans Grímsvötn führt zunehmend zu Behinderungen im Luftverkehr. Mehrere Fluggesellschaften strichen für den Vormittag geplante Flüge von und nach Schottland und Nordengland. Der Grímsvötn ist seit Samstag aktiv und schleudert weiterhin Asche kilometerweit in die Luft. In Island gilt deshalb im Umkreis von 220 Kilometern ein generelles Flugverbot.
When they first met the Queen and Prince Philip 2 years ago, it was clear they hit it off.
They are extraordinarily gracious people. They could not have been kinder to us.
And the mutual affection showed. That unexpected public hug may have breached royal protocol, but 2 years on, it's in keeping with what seems to be a new desire by both governments to strengthen the special relationship. The United States has no closer ally than Britain, and the President's speech to Parliament will be the most important of his European tour, according to American officials. Music to the ears here in London. But behind the scenes, expect some tough talking about Libya and Afghanistan. They've already shared beers together. This time they'll be helping out at a Downing Street barbecue in support of military families and to launch 2 new joint bodies. One on veterans' welfare and one on UK and US national security. The latest in a long line of state visits, but politics and personal chemistry already suggest it'll be an event to remember. Bridget Kendall, BBC News.
Let's go straight to our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell, who's in the gardens of Buckingham Palace, and we were hearing about their good relationship between the Obamas and the Queen and Prince Philip. I think they're staying in one of the best suites overlooking the garden where you're standing now.
They're staying in, yes, it's the Belgian suite, the suite which is always reserved for state visitors. They will be arriving here at Buckingham Palace later this morning. A few changes of plan as a result of that arrival in this country earlier than expected because of the ash cloud situation. They're coming into Buckingham Palace by road, in fact, not by helicopter now, but they will be coming in a few hours' time then for the ceremonial welcome that all state visitors to this country get. The Scots Guards, they'll be drawn up here in the gardens of Buckingham Palace. Now, that normally takes place on Horse Guards Parade, and there is normally, of course, for a state visitor to the United Kingdom, a ceremonial ride down the Mall. That doesn't happen happen in the case of the President of the United States for security reasons. So it all takes place within the safety, this enclosed space of Buckingham Palace. Then lunch with the Queen. They pay a call to Westminster Abbey to lay a wreath at the grave of the unknown warrior there. They go to Downing Street for a courtesy call, meet the British Prime Minister. A state dinner tonight, speeches by both Queen Elizabeth and President Obama. And then, of course, the serious stuff, Tim, of this state visit takes place tomorrow. President Obama addresses members of both Houses of Parliament, and unusually tomorrow, that speech taking place in Westminster Hall, the oldest part of the Palace of Westminster. Normally, speeches by visiting heads of state takes place in the Royal Gallery there, but this will be the first time that a US president has addressed members of both Houses of the British Parliament in Westminster Hall, and of course also tomorrow talks with the British Prime Minister.
It surprised me, Nick, how rare state visits are by visiting US presidents. This is only, what, the third in 100 years?
Well, we think it's only the second, and that, in fact, is what Buckingham Palace thinks as well. It's extraordinary, really. The United States, Britain's closest ally in the world, and yet American presidents have been very reluctant to pay full state visits to this country. I think they don't much care for all the ceremonial, or in the past they haven't. The white tie banquets and all that kind of thing, I think there was a feeling that it didn't play terribly well to the domestic audience in the United States. But George W. Bush was the first US president to pay a state visit here back in 2003. President Obama, according to the palace, is only the second US president to actually come here with all the panoply of the ceremonial welcome and so on. But undoubtedly, this is a state visit, and it will be kicking off in a few hours' time.
And just looking once more at what's going to happen tomorrow, I mean, looking at the interview that they gave to the Times today, talking about not just a special but an essential relationship. Just talk us through some of the issues which we think are going to be discussed with David Cameron.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, top of the agenda, as Bridget Kendall was indicating just a moment ago, will be issues such as Libya, the United Kingdom perhaps looking for rather more leadership from the Americans on the whole question of Libya and what should be done there. Afghanistan, both countries with our military forces in Afghanistan, but both countries, of course, looking to a reduction in those forces in the next few years. The aftermath of the killing of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan, the relationship with Pakistan and what is happening there, that of course a matter of considerable concern to both countries. Then of course economics, that a matter of concern also to both these nations, and we remember that President Obama is going on to the G8 meeting in France afterwards. So a range of essential issues which underpin this essential relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom.
Nick, for now, thank you very much. Nick Witchell, our world correspondent in the garden of Buckingham Palace.
Das Opfer der Aschewolke ist jetzt schon US-Präsident Obama. Er und Ehefrau Michelle mussten am Abend ihren Besuch in Irland vorzeitig abbrechen und sind inzwischen in London eingetroffen. Zuvor hatte es bereits in der US-Botschaft in Dublin eine Panne gegeben. Der Cadillac des Präsidenten war in einer Zufahrt auf einer Eisenschwelle hängen geblieben. Höhepunkt der Irlandreise war eine Rede vor 30.000 Zuschauern. Zuvor hatte Obama das Dorf besucht, aus dem die Vorfahren seiner Mutter stammen. Die Katastrophe in der japanischen Atomanlage Fukushima ist noch viel gravierender gewesen als bisher bekannt. Bereits kurz nach dem Erdbeben Anfang März hat es auch in den Reaktoren 2 und 3 eine Kernschmelze gegeben, also den Supergau. Experten hatten das schon lange vermutet. Jetzt hat es auch das Betreiberunternehmen TEPCO zugegeben. Bislang war nur von einer Kernschmelze in Reaktor 1 die Rede. Aus der gesamten Anlage tritt immer noch massiv Radioaktivität aus. Mindestens 116 Tote, Tausende Verletzte und Verwüstungen, die nach Augenzeugenberichten an Kriegszerstörungen erinnern. Das ist die Bilanz eines Wirbelsturms, der über die Stadt Joplin im US-Bundesstaat Missouri hinweggezogen ist. Missouris Gouverneur hat den Notstand ausgerufen. Die Regierung in Washington ordnete staatliche Hilfen an für die Einwohner und schickte Hilfskräfte in die Region.
Nichts ist mehr so, wie es war in Joplin, hier, wo der Tornado am heftigsten gewütet hat. Fassungslos streifen die Menschen durch die Straßen, die einmal ihr Zuhause waren. Zerstörungen, soweit das Auge reicht. Rettungsmannschaften durchkämmen die verwüstete Stadt. Tausende Helfer sind im Einsatz, durchsuchen Haus für Haus nach Überlebenden und Toten. Ich habe 2 Menschen aus den Trümmern gezogen. Bei einem anderen Haus musste ich Teile einer Wand beiseite schaffen, damit der Bewohner herauskriechen konnte. Tausende Häuser, Geschäfte und Schulen sind zerstört. Rund ein Drittel der Stadt wurde dem Erdboden gleichgemacht. 20 Minuten bevor der Tornado Joplin erreichte, wurden die Bewohner durch eine Sirene vor der aufziehenden Gefahr gewarnt. Doch bis zum letzten Augenblick konnte sich niemand vorstellen, was da auf die Stadt zukam. Mein Mann war in der Garage. Er kam auf mich zugerannt und rief, ihr müsst in Deckung gehen, jetzt. Also versteckten wir uns in einem Nebenraum des Schlafzimmers. Man sagt immer, ein Tornado klingt wie ein nahender Güterzug. Ich konnte mir das nie vorstellen, aber genau so hört es sich an. Mit mehr als 300 Kilometern in der Stunde tobte sich der Sturm über der kleinen Stadt im mittleren Westen aus. Und nach Angaben der Meteorologen braut sich schon das nächste Unwetter zusammen.
In seiner Staatskarosse wollte Präsident Obama vom Hof der US-Botschaft in Dublin rollen, doch statt standesgemäßer Abfahrt das. Mit einem Scheppern strandete Beast, wie die Amerikaner die rollende Festung nennen. Das Beast, angeblich das widerstandsfähigste Auto der Welt, bleibt an einer simplen Metallschiene hängen. Gegen Bomben- und Chemieangriffe mag der Panzerwagen seine Insassen schützen, nicht aber vor den eigenen Leuten, die hier schlicht vergessen haben, die Ausfahrt auszumessen. Das war schon eine Komödie, weil die Sicherheitsleute vor der Abfahrt so ein Drama gemacht haben. Sie haben dann andere Fahrzeuge davor gestellt, damit wir nichts mehr mitbekommen. Und in diesem Sichtschutz sind Barack und Michelle Obama dann umgestiegen, ab zum weiteren Besuchsprogramm, das am Abend in Dublins Innenstadt endete. Dank euch allen, danke Irland, danke Dublin. Verabschiedet sich Obama fix, vertrieben von diesen Bildern. Grimsvötn spuckt Asche und wirbelt den Flugverkehr durcheinander. Dutzende Verbindungen nach Schottland fallen heute schon aus. Prominentestes Opfer, die Obamas. Immerhin bekam der Secret Service den Panzer Cadillac dann noch so flott, dass das Präsidentenpaar ohne Pannenhelfer zum Flieger kam. Auch Air Force One landete dann in der Nacht gewohnt fehlerfrei in London. Na bitte, geht doch.
Sind 3 Raumfahrer aus der internationalen Raumstation ISS wieder wohlbehalten auf der Erde gelandet. Die Soyuz-Kapsel mit einem russischen Kosmonauten und 2 Astronauten aus den USA und Italien schlug am frühen Morgen in der Steppe Kasachstans auf. Insgesamt 5 Stunden hat der Flug aus 350 Kilometern Höhe gedauert.
Sichere Rückkehr. Nach 6 Monaten im All sind am Morgen 3 Raumfahrer aus der internationalen Raumstation ISS in der kasachischen Steppe gelandet. Die Kapsel hatte 5 Stunden zuvor von der ISS abgedockt. Es war das erste Mal, dass eine Soyuz-Kapsel zur Erde zurückkehrte, während ein US-Shuttle ebenfalls an der Raumstation hing.